Good morning. I am so happy to be here with all of you at Fourth Universalist. I would like to thank Reverend Schuyler and the Worship Arts Committee for extending an invitation to preach. They may have not known it at the time, but they may have been taking a little bit of a risk, and not just because I came down with laryngitis this week. But you see, I have not actually attended a regular Sunday service for several months. It's not because I don't like attending Sunday services. I most definitely do. Worshiping in community has been key to my spiritual development. It is a spiritual practice I have supported with other time-intensive practices, such as meditation, journaling, and running outside. But you see, I have not had the chance to do any of these for some time because in September, I gave birth to my daughter, who's making a little noise right now. Now, I had big spiritual plans for my life with a newborn. This was going to be sacred time, the opportunity to see new life take shape, and I was going to intentionally contemplate all of the changes that were taking place in front of me. I knew I would be tired, but I figured that I could take advantage of her naps for journaling all the changes I was going through and practice meditation while she nursed. Those of you who know newborns know this is all pretty foolish. I thought I would remain a master of my spiritual domain. But as you can imagine, these grand plans quickly fell apart when I was faced with the reality of a tiny new human who needed to eat every 2 to 3 hours, even at night, and my own healing body. While she napped, sleeping and eating took on a much higher priority for me than journaling. And even if I attempted to meditate while she nursed, there was a pretty good chance I would immediately fall asleep. For the first few weeks, mere survival was the one and only priority. I believe with all my heart that caring for another human being, especially an infant, is holy work. But for me, it did not necessarily feel spiritual. It was too primal, too basic, too unrelentingly physical and unpredictable to fit into my understanding of enlightened contemplation. Even though I spent nearly every waking minute caring for my daughter, I found myself increasingly self-absorbed, thinking about how all the ways that my life had changed and how it would be forever different. Recognizing this, I yearned for a sense of the sacred, for help to focus on something outside of myself, and a way to honor this incredibly important but extremely challenging time. I knew that I needed to rethink my understanding of what a spiritual practice looked like. I did not have time or energy for anything sustained, anything that would require that I carve out a block of time. And so, instead of going big, I decided to go small. I realized that I could start focusing on the little things of my life, the things I often took for granted. This is not a new concept. Many people practice mindfulness throughout the day or remind themselves of what they are grateful for. It was just a new practice for me. And the way I went about it was by expressing praise. So let's talk a little bit about praise. The word praise is related to the words price and prize. When we praise something, we are declaring that it has value. Oftentimes, to notice and select things worthy of praise is to engage in an act of world building. We are not necessarily praising the world as it is now, but how we think it should be, shaping it to be a world infused by what we truly value. We do this in relationships, where we strengthen our bonds by expressing appreciation for each other, and we shape our own behavior to make ourselves more praiseworthy. We use praise with children and those we are teaching or supervising when they do something we want to encourage. A lot of this type of praise, though, comes from a position of power. We praise to guide, and in doing so, we assert that we have authority and expertise. The praise I want to talk about, this more spiritual praise, if you will, puts us in a different position. In this practice of praise, we are humbled and we elevate what we are praising above ourselves. Instead of trying to change or reinforce what we want in others, we are creating change within ourselves. We are still world building, but it is in equipping ourselves to be part of creating the world we want to live in. And when this is made into a spiritual practice, it can be a way of finding gratitude and joy in the everyday and the mundane. I have a feeling that most of us have had the experience of praising coffee, maybe even more than once a day. But how many times have you thought of praising uneven teeth, or your fear, or that hometown which, for better or worse, shaped who you are today? Some people here may have happily praised pickled herring with onions, while others might find nothing remotely praiseworthy in something so pungent. And yet, I think it's these little things in which we can give praise that really help us to build the muscles to begin crafting the world that we think should exist. The second reading we had today is just a taste of a much longer poem by Jennifer Michael Hecht called "No, I Would Not Leave You If You Suddenly Found God." The poem is a litany, a long list, with each line giving praise to something. Some lines we did not read include praise my halting therapist, praise the boys in long pants selling frozen Snickers at the seashore, praise death, praise the memory of being tiny and tumbled under the ocean close to death, praise arch support, and praise your brilliant heart. After over 170 lines of praise, one reason why we did not read the whole thing, the poem concludes, "No, I will not leave you if you want to worship God." Hecht herself is an atheist. But in this poem, she seems to acknowledge that praise needn't be given towards an almighty, distant divinity. Instead, it can be as simple as honoring the salt and sweat, or appreciating the way the yellow sun hits the brick building outside your window. Perhaps all of these small acts of praise really are the way to access the holy, however you may experience that in your life. Changing a dirty diaper might not seem like a holy activity, but for me, it became a sign that I was providing enough for my daughter to be healthy and to grow, that she was continuing on this remarkable path of transformation, which began with just a few cells and which we can understand biologically, but which I still find miraculous. Ultimately, I consider praise as something resulting from the act of paying attention. In order to praise something, we need to fully recognize it and name it. We might even find something praiseworthy in those things we would normally complain about, like those uneven teeth, defeat, or even changing a diaper. Because once we focus on the things we appreciate, we cultivate our sense not only of gratitude, but of our very place in things. We understand that we truly are a part of this interdependent web over which we have very little control, but which holds us nonetheless. And lest you think I am suggesting we should always be cheerful and naive, learning how to properly praise means that we can also learn how to properly lament. If praise has the power of world building by asserting what we think is important and elevating it, lament is its flip side. In our lamentations, we call out suffering, loss, and injustice to say, this is not the world that we want. It is an acknowledgement of our humanity to be able to cry out when we suffer. We need to be able to trust ourselves to know when things are wrong. But we can't always just be against something. We need to be for something too. And we can find that which is praiseworthy while we are in the depths of lamentation, even if what we find is humble. Earlier this year, a friend of mine, a married gay woman in the United Methodist Church, was lamenting the denomination's vote to strengthen their ban on same-sex and LGBT clergy. Her hopes for leadership in the church were uncertain, and her relationship with the Methodist community beyond her progressive congregation had been deeply bruised. In her despair, she shared with me that while she was in deep mourning, that she could still find the ability to praise her body, which knew when to slow down and take time when her mind did not, and which knew how to start the healing process, at least for itself, when she herself felt adrift. I do not believe that events occur because of some divine will, or that there is always a reason for things happening. Our world, in many ways, is not in our control, and at times this can seem devastating. But I do think that in our darkest times, we can still look to that which sustains us. Maybe it's not always our bodies, which can often be the very cause of our distress. And while sometimes we may look towards our inner strength, there are times when we might doubt that as well. Sometimes, in our despair, the whole world can look like it is coming apart, and we just can't find the good in our societies or humanity to uplift. But we might find small opportunities for praise in the little things. That cup of coffee in the morning that allows you to open your eyes just a little bit more. The friend who has reached out to check up on you. Maybe even just the quality of light that comes through a particular window in the late morning, giving you some time to bask in the sun. These small, quiet acts are reminders that praise needn't always be shouted from rooftops. Yes, we can sing songs of praise together, as often happens on Sundays. We can recite poems and say, "Isn't this a gorgeous day?" But praise can also be the simple act of living a life, what Mary Oliver described as paying attention, being astonished, and telling about it. In the telling, it might just be to yourself. It might be in the way that you go about your day. Maybe it doesn't always involve words. It may mean being totally silent for the times when words fail and all you have is a sense of awe or celebration. Earlier in the service, we read about the ways to start the day through honoring the sun. The book ended with the concept that there is a new sun every day, and that it lives for that day only, from dawn to dusk. It is our responsibility to make a good day for this one day at a time sun, and to make a good world for its one day life to live in. If you were writing a list of things to praise, what would you put on your list? How would you go about your day to make a better world in its honor? What would you all of a sudden pay attention to? Last January, I was heading to the subway in the early evening. I was doing my usual New York City walk, more of a hustle than a stroll, and was distracted by my long list of to-dos and my constant feelings of nausea. I was newly pregnant and afraid of becoming too emotionally attached. Nothing is promised at that point. But all of a sudden, I looked up and clearly saw the stunning crescent moon. Oh, baby, I thought. I cannot wait to show you the moon and all of this incredible earth. I was not trying to practice praise at the time, but then I was pulled out of myself, pulled out of my fear and any of my daily frustrations, and just took in the moonlight. I knew that whatever happened, that I was just a small part of a miraculous story of generations that spanned millennia on an earth that has sustained life with elegance and mystery. And that, I believe, is worthy of praise.